Welcome to Crushgasm, the podcast dedicated to the highs and lows of crushes. From their first to their worst, we're going to cover them all with a cascade of characters, including our guest today, one of the lovely authors featured at this year's Columbus Book Festival, Libby Kay. Obviously an author, but also a librarian, romance superfan, and podcaster is here to talk not only about the fifth book in her Buckeye Falls series, Forever to Fall, but also her first crush ever, the youngest member of New Kids on the Block, Joey McIntyre. Libby, how are you?
I am doing great. How are you doing?
I am so tired. It was the first day of school and I don't even have kids for 2 weeks.
Oh my God. Yeah. That's the crazy thing. I feel like school starts earlier and earlier. I have friends who are teachers and they're back at school already too. It's crazy.
Yeah, my nephew went back, I believe, in California a week and a half ago. And I was like, still the beginning of August. It feels like it's crazy.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, it's still summer.
Yeah, it's like, well, I'm pre-K. So right now we're just kind of like meeting the parents and the kids and they're coming by the classroom. And then early childhood education makes us do all these classes up into, it's like we already know, we did last year. So
Yeah.
we'll start on the 5th. We'll have our kid, but it was first through we're through an 8th grade. So first to 8th. Yeah. So they came and it was cute. We saw some of our kiddos that were going to start kindergarten come today. So it's cute to see them.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, it is. Because you just I don't know if I could be like a teacher because you get attached to that group and then you're like, oh, and then you got to say goodbye. And you're like,
yes, that would be really hard. That would be really hard.
It's so hard. You see him and you're like, that's not your student. That's my baby.
Yeah.
But before we get into all things Joey and romance, can you let people know where they can find you online?
Yes, absolutely. You can find me. My website is libbyKayauthor.com. And then I also am active on Instagram and Facebook. Both of those is at Libby Kay Author. I'm trying to get into TikTok. I admit I'm on the struggle bus with that one. So eventually I will be on there. I think I have a page, but I will admit there's not much going on there. But yeah, my books are available at all of the retailers you would expect: Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple Books, and Kobo, and hopefully at your local library. If you're in Central Ohio, definitely your local library. And if you don't see my books, shameless plug, ask for them. No.
Awesome. Support your local library. I love it. The one in downtown LA is when I lived out there, my favorite. If you're gonna go to LA and do touristy things, please go to the LA library in downtown. It is 8 floors, I believe, and it's so beautiful.
Beautiful. 8 floors. That is we have family in California, and that's definitely on my bucket list because I've heard it's gorgeous. But yeah, definitely. I love a good library. And not just saying that as a librarian, but as a reader.
I love it, especially I went to college out there, so having to do research is really, you just go down, take the subway. There's a station right there. Oh, lovely. And then there's a nice place to, and for book fans, they have that nice bookstore down there. The name escapes me right now, but I'll let you know what it is.
Is it the last bookstore? Because I went to that one last year.
Circle.
Yes, exactly. That was crazy. I had no idea how big it was, and they had all those different bookish art displays there, and I love any excuse to go see bookstores because we have family out there, and we also went to the Ripped Bodice, the romance only bookstore that was in Culver City. And that was definitely, if you're a romance fan, worthy of your bucket list because it's an adorable shop. The staff are so friendly and knowledgeable about anything romance related. So plus it's just a cute shop.
I will say the Book Loft in Columbus, Ohio gives the Last Bookstore a run for its money.
Yes.
I found it pretty cool. I went and I spent too much. I'm one of those buy a lot of books, don't read a lot of books gals.
Oh, you're in good company there.
I'm like, I'm a memoir girl. That's my forte. So I'm always like, new memoir's out. I got to get it. I've had Elliot Page's since it's come out. I have not. I've been skipping around. So
No, I'm a mood reader for sure. And that's actually, is that called Page Boy? Because that's been on my
Yeah.
TBR for, I think, pretty much since it came out.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Any good memoirs that you've read recently that you would recommend? I'm kind of in a memoir slump.
I'm right now, I am obsessed. I am in the middle of it. One in a Millennial by Kate Kennedy.
Oh.
It's half memoir, kind of. I feel like it's memoir, but also kind of sociology into like like pop culture and just study of millennials, like everything. Like she broke down beautifully the American Girl series in a way I've never thought of.
Oh, I love the American Girl books.
And
I
I
was such a
thought,
huge fan back in the day.
like it just, you're reading it like this is me in book form. I've never felt so connected to a book in my life. It's so good. Like she is I'm on a chapter where she's breaking down popular girl handwriting of the 2000s, like that bubbly,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
gel pen.
Yep. I can picture the glitter gel pens very clearly.
So let's get to this crush, because you might believe this as well, since you're a romance writer and reader, but I think everyone has one of those islands inside their heads, like an inside out, made up of crushes, because they help form like the basis of who will catch our eye in a crowd, who we might end up with in life. And for you, that island started to be constructed when you were 7 and you saw Joey McIntyre for the first time. But I want to know, was it a video, a magazine at the grocery store, a song on the radio? Like, how did Joey Mac come into your life?
I definitely remember getting, and I can't remember if it was Tiger Beat, but it was one of those, teeny pop culture magazines, which, I mean, I probably still read an adult version of that, I guess, in People magazine. But I remember seeing it at the grocery store checkout line. I remember going to a friend's house and her older brother had on MTV. And so I saw the video, but I remember the songs on the radio. We always had the radio playing in the house. And so there was just something about it to my 7-year-old self is like, wait a minute, who's this kid? He's adorable. And I remember immediately asking for the cassettes, because now I'm dating myself because they were cassettes. But I remember getting the cassettes, and then just slowly the obsession grew to the point where I pretty much had any available merchandise that we could get at the time.
That's how it goes. That's how it goes.
Yeah,
would you say?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you please.
I was gonna say, were there any qualities in Joey McIntyre that you might have like stored in the back of your mind on that island that have like been a constant in the people you've liked or dated as you've gotten older?
Definitely, yes. And it's funny because since we chatted and I was planning on being on the show, I started going back and watching some of the old New Kids videos with my husband. And I didn't realize that some of the early videos, Joey's hair is very curly and my husband has very curly hair.
Oh.
And so I'm like, okay, that definitely was something. For him in that group, he was the youngest one by a couple years. Well, still is the youngest one by a couple years. And I think for me, being so young when I first kind of became obsessed with their music and then him, I think for me, it was just like he was more, I'm saying accessible, not that in any way, 7-year-old me had a chance, but I think there was something about like he was always portrayed as the young kid of the group. And so I'm like, okay, that's definitely approachable. But I was rewatching some of the old videos, which is just so fun to go back and watch. It's like been a lovely little trip down memory lane. And I definitely think he was the lead on the Please Don't Go Girl video. And there was just something so like sappy and sweet. I think that just kind of, I'm not saying he in particular is the only reason I write romance books, but I've always been obsessed with romance anything my whole life. So I think it might have been planting little seeds of like, in romance books, we call them cinnamon roll heroes, but the sweet hero, the guy that would do anything, very like a golden retriever, just very sweet and lovable. And I definitely think those are qualities in Joey that attracted me to him in the group at that age. And in some ways, continue to this day as an adult.
It's funny you mentioned it. We've talked about accessibility being a big factor of crushes, especially when we're elementary, middle school age, liking like Topanga or some like those JTT,
Yes.
Someone that you're like, well, if we met like while I was on vacation, like I think everyone has that summer vacation romance. Maybe it's just the people that love romance, but we're always like, well, on this vacation, we're going to fall in love.
Exactly. No, oh my gosh. That is exactly what it was. He seemed like a kid that you would see, at school or in the neighborhood. Because some of the older kids, like I remember Donnie was like the edgy bad boy. And watching the videos now as an adult, it's like, oh my God. At the time, I'm like, oh my gosh, he must be really tough. And now I'm like, oh geez.
It's like me and my friend used to have wine nights and watch boy band videos, and we'd be like, and we'd rate them because that's what we do. Hair, build,
no judgment here.
Fashion, it's just you look back and you're like, what were they selling us? What
I know. Speaking of selling, I remember begging my parents, and bless their hearts, they obliged, and they bought me this like 3-foot tall Joey poster that I had hanging over my bed when I was like 8 or 9. And I had the sheets, and I had like a little watch, like a digital watch. And I had like I'm saying Barbie doll, but you know what I mean? It was like a Joey Ken doll, I guess. And a bunch of other nonsense that I'm sure is still cluttering my parents' basement. But yeah, there was something about it. There's this like feeling of obsession. And it was before the internet, again, dating myself. So it wasn't like I was just doom scrolling on my phone and being like, oh, he's kind of cute. It was just like I had to actively go out of my way to find all I could on Joey and the new kids.
That's what the kids today don't realize. You can find everything you want about, even going back to just the Bieber fever, the Beliebers. Yes. You had the internet and you have them posting on Instagram. We didn't have that. We had to wait for like Tiger Beat to post a picture of them holding like a candy cane or whatever prop it was.
Exactly. And if you were lucky, I don't think we had MTV when they were big. We got that when I was like older. Again, dating myself. But I just remember going to people's houses that had MTV and seeing the videos, and it was just like these little snippets in time of like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. Because again, none of it was on demand. You were at the mercy of what was on TV or what was around you.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned Please Don't Go Girl. Was that your like go-to Joey Mac song?
Probably just for him. I think I remember The Right Stuff. I think that was their second album, but that was the first album that was the one that I heard on the radio and became obsessed with. I'm sure much to my parents' chagrin. But yeah, that definitely, because that was mostly him. And it just had, again, he was so young and so was I. And it just had that like saccharine sweet bubblegum ballad, and it was just, the stuff he was singing about, of course, or especially me, because I think he's like 10 years older than me, had no idea what he was talking about. And I certainly didn't understand any of it. But yeah, I definitely wore out those tracks for sure. And I remember when the Step by Step album came out, I think I was maybe 9 or closer to 10 at that point. And I just remember me and my best friend from back home, like memorizing it. To this day, I asked the DJ at my sister's wedding a couple of years ago to play it. And my friend Kelly and I got out and did the dance and sang like idiots. And it's like, it was 30 years later and we were like, yep, let's do it.
Do you think, because for me, to the people I grew up with, I will always be that Backstreet Boy girl. That's what I'm known as. Was that you? Was everyone aware that you were like New Kids all day?
Yes. Super fan. And actually, speaking of Backstreet, I was New Kids, and then it kind of, I don't want to say it fizzled. It did fizzle out because you grow up, but it kind of fizzled out, and I was into some like TV and movie stars. And then I remember before NSYNC became huge in the States, my best friend in high school and I, we used to, again, every reference I have is like from a million years ago, it seems, but we used to go to Circuit City to get CDs, and they had this section of pop groups from Europe. And I remember we got the NSYNC CD when they were in Germany. It was all in English, but it was released in Germany. And I remember we listened to that and we heard Tearing Up My Heart and I Want You Back. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is something. And I remember it had that same like visceral reaction where I was like, I don't know what these guys are doing, but I'm on board.
We're going to talk more about NSYNC in a minute because that is definitely my era. But do you have a ranking of the New Kids members, and has it remained the same since you were 7? Because I'll admit, when it comes to my favorite boy band, it's changed over the years. My favorite from when I was 10 is no longer number 1. He's gone down the ranks.
Yeah, I would say for the New Kids, definitely it's still Joe all the way. I would say Jordan was, I would say second, but it wasn't a close second. And the other three, and again, they're all too old for me at the time. But the other three just felt so much older. And like Donnie was the bad boy. Danny seemed way too old for me. And Jonathan was very sweet, but like he was the quiet one. And I guess I just wanted like the younger, not in your face, because he wasn't really in your face, but you know, Joey definitely had that like kid personality. For me at the time was great, but I think it's probably the same. I would think it's the same. And actually, since we set this up, I'm so excited. The new kids are actually coming to Columbus, where I live, and my husband got us tickets, so we're going on Friday. So it's like 35 years in the making. I'm like, I finally get to see them.
Oh, you never got to see them in their heyday?
No, never. I grew up in Pennsylvania, and they came to the local arena a couple times, but my parents wouldn't take me. Something I still will randomly bring up from time to time.
I know.
I remember they took my sister to see Hanson, because she's younger than me. She's a huge Hanson fan. And I was so upset because I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, I've been begging to go to see the new kids for like a decade. And Hanson comes to town and they're like, yeah, we'll take your sister. I'm like, this is an outrage.
Oh my, I would be so mad. I'd be like, I'm going to put you in a home right now. I would be like livid over that. I'd be so mad if because I have a little brother and he was like obviously spoiled more than me, the middle child, but yeah. Oh my God. But
we still laugh about it. I mean, now that I'm going to see them, and, you know, I'm also an adult, so I guess I'll get over it. But I just remember like, you know, they said it like, oh yeah, we're doing this. And I'm just like, oh no, this is devastating.
I went to New Kids. I saw them play Jimmy Kimmel. It was my first time seeing them. My friends were fans, so I went with them, and I was like, wow, because like I'm a little like, yeah, I'm a Backstreet Boy fan, so I come from like a different generation just by a few years, not too much. And I was like, whoa, they still have such a pull, and that's amazing. And the lady who like did the audience for Kimmel, usually so professional, she was flipping out because that was like the one like guest she ever like cared about. It was really cute. And then I went to the New Kids tour when they toured with Backstreet Boys.
Yes. Oh, my dream ticket, which I'm sure will never happen because they keep saying they're not going to get back together, would be if NSYNC and the New Kids went on tour. Like I would go anywhere on earth to see that. I mean, my heart would probably explode.
Backstreet Boys have been bugging them for years, and Spice Girls. They're trying to get like some type of like super duper, like we can probably never have to tour again after we do this tour.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh, the Spice Girls, that would be incredible. I mean, that's like a late 90s dream.
Oh, it would be. I know. Yeah, I was one of those girls like when the Backstreet NSYNC that I always say I was in like the boy band war of 1999 because I was like I will go to the end of the earth to like honor them, but then God Must Spend a Little More Time came out and I was like, dang it, the song's really freaking good.
Yeah, no, it was. That was a real. Oh, I haven't thought about that song in a minute. Yeah, that's a good one.
I still remember the first time I saw the video on TV. I was behind the couch, like in the living room, and I looked over that black and white, and I was like, "Oh, this is good. Damn it."
Yeah, no, you know what? I might have to listen to that after this. I haven't thought about that song in ages.
Speaking of NSYNC, I have a friend who she was writing like NSYNC kind of fan fiction, and I always think it's interesting this link between fangirls and writing because a lot of them start with fan fiction, like from boy bands, and then I remember like the rise of like emo music and Tumblr and LiveJournal having a lot of it. Was that something you ever dabbled in?
No, and actually, I'm surprised I didn't because there's always been I'm very into pop culture. I love trivia. Like I've always been very into that scene, but I've never thought about, not that I'm sure I'm definitely influenced by what I like in pop culture, but I've never actually gone out and done proper fan fiction. I've dabbled with a couple little notes here and there with ideas for stories, but nope, never actually. And I have friends who write fabulous fan fiction, and I think it's always fun to read, and I love that scene, but yeah, I never really got into it.
Yeah, I never read it. I just remember because I was big into Tumblr, and yeah, that emo scene, it was a wild ride.
Yeah.
Sticking with fangirls for just another second, do you think like Gen X and millennial women being bombarded and sold the idea of romance with the boy bands and ultimately those like rom-coms in the 2000s has like pushed like the romance kind of popularity of Hallmark movies and the novels still today?
I definitely think so. For me anyway, and I know for a lot of my girlfriends, what's that term? I guess I'm an elder millennial because I'm definitely a millennial, but I'm on the older side of it. And I can see a difference with friends that I have that are definitely in the Gen X group versus slightly younger friends that I have that would definitely be on the younger side of millennial. And just our approach to it, and by that I mean like fangirling over hot guys or girls, no judgment either way. I can see like the millennials and the younger Gen Xers are a little bit more, and I'm using the word feral in a good way. I think we are there's something about how we were brought up, and like we were just talking about, we didn't really have choices, where I think, and now I sound like an old person saying kids today, but the younger generations they do have the benefit of choice. They can pick who they're into and they can find a variety of ways to access that. And so I think we were kind of fed certain things. We picked and chose what we liked. And I definitely think, for me, it definitely shaped it, because I've always, I mean, ever since even when I took that Joey poster off my wall, there was another guy or 10 to replace him.
Yeah.
And it was just this like boy crazy until I actually started dating in high school. Like, oh my gosh. Well, even after I started dating in high school, I still had my locker filled with pictures of cute guys from magazines. So that never changed. But I definitely think, because there's just something about, and I'm saying fall in love, but I don't mean literally, because that's a little much. But you have that like excitement of like finding that new celebrity crush and that falling in love moment. And it's like, it's addictive in a way. And I think for me, that's why I gravitate towards romance as a reader as well, is I like that little moment of like, watching people find a connection with someone. It's just, I don't know, there must be something unlocked in my brain that it's like, ooh, that's kind of like, when you have these crushes and, these little obsessions with pop culture people. I think it's fun.
Yeah, I always sometimes I'll ask people, hey, do you want to be on the show? And tell them what it's about. And they'll be like, I don't think I've ever had a crush. And I'm like, what?
What? No, I mean, from us emailing back and forth, I had like 15 people I wanted to mention.
I'm like, that is odd to me, because I've been obsessing over people since I've watched like Alvin and the Chipmunks. Like, I was like, oh, Alvin's my boyfriend. Like,
yeah. See, I like Simon because he was nerdy and quiet.
Oh.
So again, like, not that I'm not calling my husband a nerd, but he's on the quieter side. And that is definitely something that, looking back at other celebrity crushes I've had, again, these little traits you don't think about until one day you look at your husband and you're like, oh my God.
I know. Well, my husband's not quite Nick Carter, but Nick Carter's not my number one anymore. After his reality show, I was like, ugh. We gotta break
and wasn't
up.
there a bunch of stuff going on with his brother back in the day, who I know passed away a couple years ago, which was terrible.
Yeah, he's got a lot of problems.
Like there was some family stuff going on that's just breaks your heart.
The Carter family, forever drama with those ones. But
Yeah.
let's go back to Joey, because on top of writing and podcasting, when you do get a free chance, you like baking. So if you got a chance to bake Joey a sweet treat, what would it be and why?
Oh my gosh. I would probably say, I don't know, I guess cupcakes, because I haven't baked cupcakes in a little while, but I love like the process of it. And I feel like decorating it, you can really personalize it. So I'd probably do, and I don't even know what my theme would be, probably some bold 80s colors. But yeah, I could totally see myself baking some cupcakes for Joey, which I realize sounds like a euphemism, but.
You'd mentioned that you were into New Kids. You go to Circuit City, you see the NSYNC CD. They start to kind of push New Kids a little out of the way. It happens. Good Charlotte pushed Backstreet Boys out of my life when I started to think I was like cool and shopping at Hot Topic. When you got into NSYNC, did you have like a favorite member instantly?
Oh yes, my favorite instantly was JC, and then it shifted to Justin. And again, it's the curly hair, because when I met my husband in college, he had curly, well, he still has curly hair, but he had frosted his tips, not quite like the Justin ramen noodle look, but it was enough that like from across the dining hall, I was like, wait a minute, what's going on with that guy?
And if they were before you with you had a rose like The Bachelorette, I suppose that's how that show works. I've only seen a few episodes. JC, Justin, and Joey, who are you giving that rose to after all these years?
Oh, after all these years, right now, definitely Joey. And I think it's just because of the excitement of getting to see them on Friday. We've been joking about it all week, but I mean, overall, I definitely think, I think I was, and again, it was just because I was older and probably like hormonal and crazy teen girl, but I felt like the JC obsession was almost, if not more, consuming. I didn't have the 3-foot poster, but I was also older, and I had a friend who had a car, and we would drive and get CDs, and she had a convertible, so we'd have the top down blaring, bye bye bye, and we thought we were pretty badass. I think we were, but I'm sure other people didn't think so.
You were.
But yeah, I mean, we had a good time. I definitely think. Yeah, no, it was a good time.
I mean, if you're not blasting 90s pop, what are you doing with your life?
Exactly. Like there's like a nostalgia. You can't listen to if any type of boy band. I feel like if you put on most boy band songs of any era, you're gonna get a smile on your face because it's addictive. It's poppy. It sticks in your head and makes you smile. It's just, I don't know. It's fun music, and not that I don't listen to other stuff because I do, but there's definitely something mood elevating about just that bubblegum pop.
I was probably too. I definitely was not the demographic for One Direction, but I did get to see them in their prime. I went with a friend because somebody dropped out of going with her, so I got to go. And I was like, wow, it's crazy to see when you're not like in the fandom. You just kind of know the music, and you're like, I'm happy for these people. I'm happy for these girls.
Exactly. That's what it is. Because it's a new generation discovering their version of Joey and Nick and whoever,
And on that, and Jonas
wholesome.
Brothers, all that. It's just, it's beautiful to see it continue.
Yes. Oh, my nieces love, I don't know if they still do, but they really love the Jonas Brothers back in the day. They're all in college and out of college, so probably not as much, but in my mind, they still love them.
I think they probably, if they announced a show that was close, they'd go.
Yeah.
That's what you have to do. I did see them the first time they ever did Jimmy Kimmel, and they had girls, because this is the first time, so when they were still pretty just popped off, like 12 years, you have to be 16 to go to the outdoor concert of Jimmy Kimmel. They were making fake IDs down the street.
Are you serious?
At the Kinko's. Yeah, these little girls, they were like climbing the fences. It was wild. So the second time they came back, the staff was like PTSD, like freaking out. But the girls, it had been a few years, so they had matured. So it was a lot calmer.
Oh, like, bless their hearts.
The staff's faces were like, oh God, they're back.
Getting fake IDs when you're 12. I mean, I was just happy my parents would buy me posters and, bed sheets with my crush's face on it. I can't imagine asking them to drive me to Kinko's to make a fake ID.
There was a family, a little, like I think they drove up from Mexico.
Oh, wow. That's dedication.
I love it. I respect it. It was one of the most unforgettable Jimmy Kimmels I ever got to go to.
It sounds like it. Oh my gosh.
So we've reached a part in this episode where we're going to dive into our imagination. So if you and Joey were both single, met, and fell for one another, what romance story kind of plot line would you most want your love story to follow?
Ooh, okay. I think, because I'm a fan of this as a reader, and this is always on my bucket list of things I want to write, I would definitely try to make it like some, the celebrity, quote unquote, normal girl romance, where I would just get swept up in I know the excitement is not as much as it was back in the 80s and 90s, but, I would love to get swept up in that scene. Again, not in real life. I think I would be exhausted in 2 days, but I feel like in this fantasy land, I definitely think that would be, I think that would be cool to step inside that celebrity world and, just get access to things that, us normal people never even understand or know exist. So yeah, for sure. That would be, going on dates to close down museums. We're going after hours, or, he shuts down a whole theater so we can see a movie, stuff like that.
Well, there you go. You have your next book. It kind of can be your intro to fan fiction. You have Joey in your head.
That's a good point. And I am in between writing books at the moment, so I do need to start brainstorming.
We talked about the crush. Now we're going to talk more about what you have going on. You just released Forever to Fall, the 5th book, again in your Buckeye Falls series. When you started writing, was a series always the goal of these books?
For this series, yes. I always thought it was going to be a trilogy. I had these 3 male characters in mind, and how I wanted how I wanted this town to look. And plus, as a reader, I like reading standalone books, but as a romance reader in particular, there is something about these small town romance series like Sharon Sala and Susan Mallory that just, you can pick them up at any point in the series. you already get a sense of the town. You can, you get a sense for the characters, and there usually are characters, quirky people that make the story interesting and compelling. And so as a reader, I've loved those books for years. And so when I started writing out ideas, the first one, Falling Home, came out in the holiday season of 2022. And it's pretty much a stereotypical Hallmark movie in book form, where the girl comes back to her small town in Ohio from New York City and reconnects with her ex-husband. And of course, sparks fly and shenanigans ensue. So I wanted that. I loved that idea for a story, but I wanted there to be more of a sense of place. And I wanted to have the ability to continue to see those characters and to kind of give a little taste of the other characters that would be coming later in the series. And so it started just as a trilogy. And then when I started writing the third book, the sister character of Anthony, the hero, Alice, was just, as soon as I started writing her, like, I was obsessed, and I'm like, she needs her own book. And then as I was writing her book, I realized there was one more character that needed her own book too. And that's how we got to Forever to Fall. Is Mallory was kind of supporting everyone else in this town while they got their happily ever after. And I thought, I cannot end this series without giving Mallory her own happily ever after. That's just not fair.
And why do you think that romance has this like love affair with small towns?
I think, well, and it's funny, I grew up in suburbia, and right now I live downtown, so it's not the same at all. But for us, when we travel and we go to these little picturesque small towns, and that can be anywhere, like California, New England, the South, wherever, there's something just utterly romantic about like a main street and the idea that you have these people there, in some cases found family, who want to take care of you and support you and, are there for you. But I also think, for me as a writer, the benefit of writing a small town is, Buckeye Falls is not a real place. It's based off a couple places that I kind of hodgepodge together in my brain. But I like the freedom that, I can have whatever I want to have happen in this little town. And, the people in any small town, wherever it is, they always have an interest in what's going around them and a curiosity. And I think, and I probably get that from being a librarian, but I've always been curious about what makes people tick. And so I think for me, that's kind of the fun of writing small town romances, is you get to make this place and you get to see what makes people tick.
I never thought about that. Like small towns, yeah, you are more interested in your surroundings because it's so like tight knit.
Exactly.
Instead of a big city where it's like hustle and bustle, like New York, you're not going to care who just walked by you, just trying to get to the next destination.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, as far as Forever to Fall, you just said you wanted to give Mallory her ending. So it's Mallory and Beckett. They got married when they were kids playing pretend. Years later, they find themselves the maid of honor and best man at her brother's wedding. I like this story because I love the one that kind of got away, but a reunion.
Yes.
Do you think these type of stories like do well because everyone kind of holds a little piece of their first love with them?
Oh, absolutely. And I'm banking on that as a writer, that'll be something that a reader is, like, oh, I remember when that happened with, whoever. I'll just call him Joey because that's the theme of the show. But yeah, I definitely think that, and there's people, I have friends and family who married their high school sweethearts and they're as happy now as they were back then. So I think there's something to be said for finding that connection early in life and then getting to share, your life with that person. I mean, obviously it's romantic, but it's heartwarming and, kind of hopeful. And so when it was time to come up with my idea for, who Mallory was going to fall for, I had alluded in the previous books that she had gotten her heart broken, but I'm like, oh, do we want to have that guy come back or do we want someone new to come in? And at the last minute, I just thought, you know what, this needs to be, I just felt like it would be more relatable. Because like you said, everybody, even if it was just a crush that was unrequited and didn't go anywhere, we all have that guy or girl from our past that we're like, oh man, I wonder whatever happened to them. Or wouldn't it be crazy if this would have happened and we ended up together instead? I think that just seems kind of universal. And it was fun to write. And I definitely had nostalgic moments thinking of previous crushes, but I have to note that I am still very happily married and love my husband.
People that are married come on and we talk about crushes and we love our partners. We do. But
Yes.
It's fun to think about what my life would have been like if my mom did buy me Backstreet Boy tickets and I got to go and
I
married
know.
Nick Carter at 12. Like, why did I think I was like, it's insane to think about.
Well, nothing we thought about at that age should ever be held against us because, I mean, our brains weren't even fully formed.
True. They were just like going off like fumes of like sugary treats and like Tiger Beat, the smell of like Bop magazine.
Oh, Bob, I haven't thought about that in a minute. Oh my gosh, yes.
That was always classier because their pictures were glossier.
They were. Ooh. Oh, and they always had like, and I hate saying centerfolds because that makes it sound like it was pervy, but they had the centerfold. And like, I remember I had like the JTT one and what was that kid from Sequest? Jonathan Brandis. He was huge when I was a kid. I just remember those posters. Oh my God, so funny.
I love, like, that's another thing kids are missing out on, decorating your room like you are like an obsessed serial killer.
Yes, exactly. Taking out bits and pieces from certain things. And like I remember with NSYNC, and I can't even remember who the girl was, but they were talking about who they were dating. And I remember I'm like, well, I'm not gonna put that up. Yeah. I like cut out the story and just did the picture. It was so funny. Oh.
Mm-hmm. You're like, oh, she's rumored to have been near him. No.
I know. I'm like, no, I don't want her anywhere near me.
On top of writing, you also have Romance Roundup, a podcast tailor-made for people who love romance novels. It's so clear from listening to you and Liz that you guys are insanely connected to one another and what you speak about. I was listening to the one you had about book covers because I noticed like 80s, 90s, obviously we had the Fabios, but yeah, it has gotten very like animated in the recent years. And because trends always cycle, do you think we'll ever get back to the strapping man with the windblown hair?
I think so. And I think it's because we always, and I'm speaking in generalities, but I feel like people always crave that time before, that nostalgia. And I think, like, I remember my Nana had some of those Fabio clad paperbacks. And I remember thinking like, oh, I'm not allowed to be looking at this, but here I go, like paging through it. And it was all like illicit. And, you know, and now in hindsight, I bet if I read one of those, I'd be like, this is boring. But yeah, I don't think that trend is going anywhere anytime soon because, you know, their books, usually they start promoting them a couple years in advance with the covers. And I see no sign of that stopping. But Liz, I think, has more cover fatigue with the illustrated covers than I do. But I love when there's new trends. And in that episode, we talked about like how some books now are just coming out with like, you know, maybe a seascape in the background and just the title and that's it. And there's no other, you know, people or trinkets in the picture. But I think, I don't know, I mean, maybe not necessarily Fabio's hair, but, you know, some of the steamier books still just have shirtless guys. And in some cases, they don't even have their faces. They cut the poor guy's head off right at the top of the book.
Yeah, I did talk to a romance, but she did more, what was the genre? Kind of like the vampire romance.
Oh yeah, paranormal. That's
huge. Paranormal. Yeah, and she wrote about that, like vampires and stuff. And her covers are like a little more leaning of that era, like the sexy, like
yeah. No, and if I wrote sexier, I probably would lean into that because again, all romance books are selling, but those, you know, you get these voracious readers who just want the steamy stuff, and I think. Now it's in some ways it's almost blurred lines because I've picked up some books over the last year that had kind of cutesy covers and, you know, there's some serious stuff going down in the bedroom. And again, not judging and I like it, but it's like, whoa, I wasn't expecting this. I thought it was going to be something cutesy and it's like, it's not cutesy.
More sexy. So who do you think spends more time thinking about their cover art? Authors for their books or musicians for their albums?
Oh, that's a good question. I think, I don't know, because it's tough because I feel like for musicians now, I mean, obviously record stores are coming back, but it's like, I feel like you can advertise stuff now without necessarily the album cover, but I feel like a book, regardless of if it's an ebook or an audiobook or a print book, you still need to have that cover. So I don't know. I mean, I know I obsess about it. I'm obsessing about covers for books I haven't even written yet. So I'm going to be selfish and say that the writers think about it more than the musicians, but that's probably not fair. I'm sure they think about it too, because it's fundamentally it comes down to marketing and you want it to be visually appealing because I don't care what people say. We definitely judge books by their cover. And I mean, me, especially as a reader, if I'm like, oh, it's kind of a boring cover, I'm not even going to bother reading the description, which isn't fair because it probably would be a good book anyway. But
I mean, totally agree. I think that's part of the reason Goosebumps and Babysitter's Club and Sweet Valley High did so well. It's those covers were so cool and they still are
Yes.
iconic. Oh God, I love a
Oh,
baby.
those Goosebumps ones. And Sweet Valley High. Oh my gosh, I loved those books. I haven't thought about those in a minute.
R.I.P. to the author of those. She just passed away
I know.
recently.
And what wasn't she in her 90s or something?
Yeah, she was up there. So she lived
Bless
she
her
lived a
heart.
sweet life.
Yeah, she did. We should all be so lucky.
So before we get out of here, we're gonna do a quick speed round based around books.
Okay.
Do you remember the first book you ever loved?
Ooh, I would say I remember it definitely wasn't the first. I remember as a kid, like picture books with my parents, and obviously these are not romances. There was a book called The Big Snow, and I have very vivid memories of my dad reading that to my sister and I when we were kids. And then I remember there was a book, I can't remember, I can picture the cover because it had like a mean teacher in it. It was called, oh my gosh, it's on the tip of my tongue. Miss Nelson is back, or Miss Nelson is missing, something with Miss Nelson. But it was a picture book series. I think it was only a couple of them, but it was about a substitute teacher. And I remember my mom reading those to my sister and I. And those I still will randomly think about. And as a librarian, even a handful of years ago, before the pandemic hit, I remember seeing someone checking out the Miss Nelson books, and I like squealed, and I'm like, oh my God, I read these like not 40 years ago, but long ago. And, probably scaring the poor woman who was checking them out. But yeah, I remember those. But like in terms of romance stuff, I remember, and again, I know it's not considered a romance, but I remember reading Little Women and being obsessed with Joe and Laurie, even though that obviously wasn't the only point of that story. But I still, to this day, gravitate towards the romantic elements of any plot of any show, TV, or movie, or book. It's just, I can't help myself. But yeah, Little Women, I remember reading that. And Anne of Green Gables, same thing. And her and Gilbert, like, ooh, so cute. So yeah, I would say stuff like that definitely sticks in my head. And then Sweet Valley High, when I got a little bit older, I read through a lot of those. Oh, and the Nancy Drew mysteries. They had like that new Nancy Drew in like the early to mid 90s. That was like, it's the same general story, but they tried to make it more like modern. Oh, they were good.
See, like a series.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's because you can get a little bit more involved. And usually when I read a book and it ends, I'm sad that it's over. So it's nice to know that you can kind of revisit those characters and places again.
And as a writer, do you have a favorite word?
Ooh, a favorite word. That's a good question. I'm trying to think. I know each book, I always have a word I say too much, and my editors have to say like, no, you've already said this word a million times. The most recent one, I think I said the word just like in a 320 page book. I think I said it like 600 sometimes, and they're like, you need to not say just all the time. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Mine is Cascade. I use Cascade way too much.
Oh, that's a good, see, and I don't feel like I use that enough.
Because I write like, I'm a blogger, so I write a lot of lists. That's my thing. Yeah. Those lists those kind of like BuzzFeedy lists. So yeah. I will say Cascade at almost every intro.
Oh, I love that. No, you know what? I need to think about it. I'll think of something at like 3 a.m. and be like, oh, I need to tell her.
And is there an author that you wish you could sit down and have coffee with and just like pick their brain for an hour or so?
Oh, yes, definitely. I would love to meet Tessa Bailey. I've been a fan of hers for years, and her romances, she does self-pub books. She does books with, traditional publishers. Her books always have that sweetness, that angst, that tension that keeps it going, but they're always very steamy. And this is going to sound funny, but if for the romance readers out there, I think they'll get it. I feel like her steam has purpose. Like, not saying I don't like steamy books just for the sex scenes, but I like when my romance has a plot that goes with the steamy sex scenes, because for me, I like that emotional tie-in. It's not just like, we're getting down to business on page 5. It's, we're only 30 pages in, but something has happened, so when they have sex, I'm totally okay with it.
It's kind of like I used to watch Queer as Folk, and there was a lot of sex in that show, but at a certain point, I was like, we're getting away from the plot here. I want more of the story. Like, you are beautiful men, but I need the story.
And I feel like Tessa Bailey does that really well, and that's why I'd love to just pick her brain and be like, how do you write? I mean, because sometimes she'll have, 3 or 4 books coming out a year. through various
Wow.
publishers, and it's like, how do you do that and not go insane? Like, tell me your ways. Because yeah, I mean, and she's a fan favorite for a reason. Her books are consistently engaging, and she always seems to like follow the trends enough, but not like too much, you know, because I feel like sometimes people lean too far into the tropes, and then you feel like you don't have as much of a complex story. But Tessa Bailey always does such a great job.
Speaking of tropes, what is the one trope in romance that you feel can be retired for a little bit?
Ooh, for me, and I hope I don't get any haters out there, I'm bored with the billionaire romances. I'm kind of sick of billionaires in real life doing things to the world, and I feel like I'm okay with billionaires. We don't need to have them be in every romance. So I definitely see the appeal, because it's fun to pretend that you could have someone who just buys you literally anything you want. But at the same time, like, I'm just kind of like, I'm kind of bored with the billionaires.
Perhaps the real world billionaires will kind of make it go away, because guys, come on.
Yeah,
we see it in real life. They're not that great.
No argument here.
And our last one in the speed round, your current celebrity crush that you would want on like a steamy romance cover.
Ooh, okay. I'm trying to think who would be. So I'm trying to think who my current obsession is. We just saw, and I wouldn't necessarily put him on the cover of a magazine or of a book jacket, but we just saw the comedian Anthony Jeselnik, and I find humor very sexy, and I think he is very attractive. And so to the point where my husband's like, okay, I get it. You think he's hot. But but again, I don't know what book I have that I would put him on, but I guess I could easily write one for him. But yeah, I think for sure him, and I think Tom Hiddleston is always very like book cover worthy. Like there's something about him that's like, you know, proper English gentleman. Like I think he could go on a nice book cover.
He was the topic of one of our episodes, and that guest, it got steamy. He was like, like, I've never thought of Loki in these ways, but okay. I actually was like, I don't get this guy. I don't get how he's attractive until that series. And then 5 minutes in, I was like, all right, I get it.
And see, I haven't even seen it. I like him in that. I'm not much for the Marvel scene, so I know him from non-Marvel things. Like him in The Night Manager, like I think 8 years ago that movie or that series came out. Holy crap. Like he can wear the hell out of a linen suit. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, he dresses so dapper as in that Loki series. I think that's part of it. It's a dapperness. One of my first crushes was Robin Hood. So you throw an accent.
Oh gosh,
the fox.
Robin
the fox.
I was just the funny thing is when you said that, I thought of the fox.
Okay.
No, it's because I'm sure you've done shows on animated crushes, because it's ridiculous looking back. Like, wow, why did I think that he was cute? It was a fox.
I think I love the Robin Hood character of like the poor, helping the poor out. I grew up very like in a poor area, so I'm like, yeah, he'll come save me from this.
It's like that hero complex. I totally get that.
But animated characters, especially anime, it gets wild on here.
That's true. I didn't even think of the anime side of it. I was just thinking like the 90s and
Disney's huge.
Yeah.
Disney. I know like there's always lists of like characters that like were your sexual awakening, and the number of people who say Scar from The Lion King.
I've seen that. I think I actually saw that on like a BuzzFeed thing or something.
It's a lot. Like I can't judge it. Mine's Robin Hood, but I'm like, okay. Like at least Robin Hood walked on 2 feet. Yeah.
I don't want to yuck anybody's yum, but come on.
I guess in the new one coming out, Mufasa, we kind of get a backstory that Scar maybe wasn't the bad guy.
Oh, I didn't know that was coming.
It's one of those, it's like that live action one, so I'm not going to see it, but
yeah,
they're creepy. Like they look too much like nature documentaries.
Yes. I did not see the Lion King that came out a few years ago, but I thought the same thing. It was a little, I get the appeal, but it's not for me.
Yeah, it was a little lifeless, especially compared to the animated version that's so vibrant and has JTT. So,
oh God, JTT, okay. I love him.
I know. I call him the millennial Bigfoot, because he's kind of like we know he exists. We just don't know where he is anymore.
I hope it's because he's like doing well and just living his life and doesn't need, the Hollywood scene anymore, because he seemed, and again, what do we know? We're reading about it in magazines, but he always seemed to have a he had his head on his shoulders, and you never heard about like him getting into trouble or doing anything illegal. So it's like in my mind, he's just living a quiet life somewhere in the Hollywood Hills.
I think last I saw a JTT sighting was probably a year or so ago. He was like walking his dog or something in a town, and I was like, okay, he lives.
Oh, good. I don't know why, but that makes me happy.
He lives. But I hope you have fun at New Kids on. That's going to be so much fun.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I literally bought a T-shirt for it, and I have to get my husband some earplugs, because between all the other women and me shouting, I'm sure he'll go deaf. But
Oh yes, I made my husband go see AJ from Backstreet Boys when he came to town with Joey from NSYNC, and he was like, "What is happening here?"
that's awesome.
He just kept looking around like at other men, like they're not. No one's happy. I was like, "Stop." It's like, we're happy, okay?
Exactly. I'm like, it's gonna make my night. You like to people watch. I'm like, well, I'll have a good time.
Oh, and I love it too, because like most of the time, like sometimes people like go all out and dress like super 80s. We had when they toured with new Backstreet Boys, like coming in like their 80s attire is really cute. So
Oh, that'd be fun. I didn't even think of that. That's a good idea. Maybe I could get like a side ponytail going or something.
lots of side ponies. So before we get out of here, can you remind people where they can find you and all your books online?
Oh, absolutely. You can find me at LibbyKayAuthor.com and on Facebook and Instagram at LibbyKayAuthor. And my books are available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, and Apple. And again, if you don't see it in your library, ask your librarian, because I know that they will buy it for you.
Well, Libby, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me about your first crush. And everyone, you can find all of Libby Kay's information below. And until next time, as always, keep crushing it. Crushgasm is part of the I Did Not Make These Rankings podcast network, along with some other pretty cool shows, including An Evening at the Movies, Crime Rewind, Literature Reapers, Love is Black, Masturbators, Men Are the Prize, Season to Season, The Sip List, and Toontastic Journeys. You can go to idnmtrpodcastnetwork.com to find not only Crushgasm, but all of the aforementioned really cool podcasts. Alrighty.